Hello everybody, my name is Dratnos and welcome to this Underrot plus 24 I did with my friends Nerf and Desert Dust, who is Yoda. That's Yoda's monk. Two players from Method NA. Flawless, a very high-powered rogue who's actually playing Assassination, not Outlaw, in this dungeon. And Venter, another high-powered M+ healer. So we're going to start off here. The affix is active. This week, we're Bolstering, Skittish, Fortified, and Reaping. The best Fortified week on the calendar, in my opinion. So a lot of great dungeons to do. Underrot is a good dungeon on both Tyrannical and Fortified weeks, I think. It's just a fantastic dungeon where none of the affixes make it feel unfair. Honestly, I believe Underrot is it's my favorite balanced dungeon in the expansion, in that it's not too easy, it's not too hard, and none of the affixes feel unfair in here. So really big thumbs up to the Blizzard developers responsible for this one. I like this place a lot. We're going to start off with a Matron and a Maggot. The Maggot does a cast that actually gets buffed its attack speed by the Warcry from the Matron, so you need to be really careful to not get one-shot by a really quick Rotten Bile cast. Rotten Bile can be interacted with stuns and with gouges, that kind of stuff. So my job as the Outlaw Rogue is going to be to control the Maggots for the most part. Nerf also does a lot of control to them as well as a Prot Warrior. So now we're moving into this pack here. This is where we're going to activate our Bloodlust. 3 Headhunters, which do quite a lot of damage to the group with their barbed spears and their nets. The nets I can vanish out of, and I can also vanish casts if I'm being targeted by multiple Headhunters on me. The Priest, by contrast, does some Blood Bolts. Blood Bolts can be spell reflected. Then it casts Gift of Gahoon, which is a very powerful aura that goes on one target. If that's not interrupted, you need to purge it with a Blood Elf or whatever. Otherwise, that target will be unkillable and have like 100% extra haste. And then the Priest, when it's low, will also decide it's time to cast Dark Reconstruction. That'll full heal somebody. So you need to stop that from going off. Otherwise, it's very bad, particularly on Bolstering. That can be a huge problem. So now we're just going to go. We're going to do a quick pull of ticks here to let some cooldowns regenerate. This pull can be pretty rough on Fortified, but we do manage to get through it here. Again, this sets up some later reaping waves, later timings. But this is you can see every time they explode, we are in trouble. We're taking some damage here. I'm almost dead. Luckily, I did manage to live there. I could use my Cloak of Shadows ability. It would have been a good use of Cloak, to be honest. So I should have done that. Now we're on a Matron Headhunter Priest pull. The Matron we didn't really talk about. It does the Warcry, which it's an enrage effect, so it can be soothed, but it can't be dispelled with Blood Elf or whatever. Matron also charges at people. The charge immediately does damage to the person it charges at. So on Fortified, if it gets bolstered, you basically need to have a defensive ready before the charge goes out. You can parry, or you can go bear form. We'll all do parries and karmas and dampen harms or whatever, and karmas before this thing does its charges, if it does get bolstered ever. And we're just going to focus damage on the Matron. The Matron has a lot more health than the other things as well, so we're going to keep attacking it preferentially. Keep that thing handled. And keep making sure the casts there. You'll see a Gift of Gahoon went off on the Matron, so somebody's going to use a Blood Elf to purge that. And we're just going to keep everything kicked and interrupted in the early trash pulls here. And the next order of business is going to be to Shroud to Elder Leaxa. Elder Leaxa is a very easy boss fight with our composition. Our composition of 4 melee kicks actually, and a Spell Reflect is more than enough to make Elder Leaxa trivial. This boss can be very hard, though. If you only have 2 melee kicks, 2 ranged kicks, and no Spell Reflect, it can actually be very, very tough. But here comes Elder Leaxa. We're going to start off by Spell Reflecting the first Blood Bolt. You can see that did 10% of her health and damage. I just want to highlight again how absurd Spell Reflection is. The only reason it's not nerfed, I believe, is because it doesn't show up in details. If it did, everybody would be sending screenshots of this. But look at this. Elder Leaxa, 98% health. Blood Bolt, bang, 89% health. Literally 10% of the boss's health gone in one global from nerf. That's also a huge defensive. It also healed him for 1 million health. It provided him 1 million health shield, and it did 1 million damage. And it's on a 25-second cooldown. So now our plan is going to be dodge all the abilities from Elder Leaxa, Creeping Rot, and Sanguine Feast. We need to dodge those. And then we're just going to keep kicks on Blood Bolts. We assign some kicks to the effigy. And basically our goal is going to be, okay, we kick the first effigy cast, the second effigy cast ends up getting hit by Spell Reflect, and that's just going to one-shot the effigy. The Spell Reflect on a Blood Bolt at this high of a keystone level will just kill the effigy outright because damage scales faster than health in Mythic Plus, so the higher the keystone level gets, the more of a one-shot Blood Bolt is going to be, the higher percent damage it actually deals to the enemies when it's Spell Reflected back. And you'll see Elder Leaxa here down to 39% health. We're getting pretty close to the point where we can just decide, all right, we'll Spell Reflect this and we'll just off-kick the next ad and just focus the boss. I don't know if that's the call that we'll end up making. I think We'll see what Nerf does here. Nope. Okay, I was ended up called in to kick the Leaxa, so we're not going to use our Spell Reflect yet. We're just going to play it safe. We're going to Spell Reflect to kill the second ad. That's fine too. It's pretty important that you don't try and Spell Reflect the first cast of the Blood Effigies, because that won't be targeting the Prot Warrior. It'll target the closest person to the effigy when it spawns, so you do have to be careful of that. But you'll see here, Nerf just using Spell Reflect takes care of the Blood Effigy in one shot. Extremely balanced ability that requires no changes. And has completely avoided being changed in the upcoming PTR. In fact, the only change in the PTR to this boss fight, as of the time of recording this video, is Blood Bolt's damage is being buffed, which is a nerf to the difficulty of this boss fight if you have a Prot Warrior in your comp, and otherwise just makes it even more impossible if you ever had to try and tank a Blood Bolt. So, really not sure what's going on there. That's there's some creative decisions being made in the development of this dungeon, but that's okay. I don't question it. I play with Prot Warriors, so I'm fine with it. We're moving on to this next pull here. 3 Living Rots and 2 Diseased Lashers. Diseased Lashers have a Decaying Mind kick, which you need to interrupt. Decaying Mind actually has a shorter cooldown than your melee kick. Your melee kick has a 15-second cooldown. Decaying Mind can go off earlier than that, so you may need to use abilities like Gouge, call in a second kick, or like Stun to keep delaying the second Diseased Mind cast until your kick comes back. Sometimes they'll just do it more than 15 seconds between the two of them though, and so you'll be fine. You'll be A-okay, and you won't have to do that. But you do have to always be ready anytime you have a melee kick assigned to a Lasher. Unless you have a Shaman, a Resto Shaman, an Ellie Shaman, or an Enhancement Shaman with their 12-second kick are uniquely powerful here, and they can handle a Lasher without any help. But you'll see there one of the Lasher casts did go off, which does stun you. It's a disease, so it can be dispelled by some specs, like our Windwalker can actually dispel it that way. Otherwise, it's a Healing Absorb that stuns you until that Healing Absorb is healed through. So this is our first Reaping Wave. We're going to reap into this pack of 3 Lashers. All 3 of them you see are marked here. And we're each going to just be taking a different kick here. So you'll see I've set the blue one as my focus here. Even if I end up targeting another mob, which I will do for bolstering purposes at some point, potentially, I will be able to kick my mob easily because I set it to my focus. That's what the purple dash means. I've set up my nameplate add-on to show me which mob I have focused with the purple dash bar. Then I have a huge focus cast bar up here. My kick timer, when I have a focus, is up right next to my focus's health bar. And I'm basically all set to be ready to watch my kick. And you can see actually my kick goes red if I'm out of range of my focus. That weak core setup I'm very happy with. I would absolutely recommend it. If you're interested in that, I'm happy to share it. If you just come into my stream ever and type like !UI, you'll get a link to a page where there's all my weak core stuff. Or if you come into my Discord, which you can also get to. I'll try and put some links in the description of this video, but sometimes I forget to do that when I promise to do it, so I want to avoid making promises I can't keep here. I'll try to remember. I'll try really hard to remember to link to some of the UI and stuff in this video. So the Reaping Wave down now, and we managed to efficiently do the Reaping Wave with some mobs. That's a really key thing to do to get you through a dungeon faster, is to never do Reaping by itself. Always try and pull it into something, and that is what we're going to do for this whole dungeon. So now we've got a pull coming here. 1 Blood Swarmer. Blood Swarmer is the threat here. Blood Swarmer needs to die first, and then 2 Lashers, which need to be kicked, and 2 Rots, which do nothing. So our plan here is just kill this Blood Swarmer. I'm actually controlling the Blood Swarmer. You'll see the Blood Swarmer does this Sonic Screech cast, and while it's screeching, it's not killing somebody. I'm the person being targeted. I'm the person who'd be dying. One thing I see people do is they kick the Blood Swarmer cast, but I think that the best way to handle Blood Swarmers is to let it cast most of the way through its Sonic Screech, and then cycle abilities like Gouge, Stun, Blind, and interrupt the end of its Screech cast with those abilities. And by doing that, you can end up causing it to just get chained into its own cast for a really long time. You'll see this Maggot's getting really close there. Great Ring of Peace comes out from Yoda to prevent it from pulling into this pack. That's fantastic play from him there. If that ended up pulling there, it would have got bolstered, and that would have been annoying. It wouldn't have been the end of the world. We would have been okay, but it would have been obnoxious. So we try to avoid that. And now we just finished killing off the rest of this pack here. You'll see I'm totally tapped on my Blade Flurry charges now. I just got to finish off this pull here. I'm re-rolling to try and get some better buffs for AoE for the next time that it is AoE time. We're not about to reap. We're going to reap after the next pull. So our plan of action is going to be 1 more pull, then reaping into another pull, and then pull some more stuff, and then pull the rest of the dungeon. I hope you've enjoyed this analysis. I'm an expert video maker, by the way, talking about giving you the insight that you need here. Okay, next pull is going to be a Maggot, a Blood Swarmer, some Rots. We're going to try not to get the second Maggot here. 2 Maggots at the same time can be a lot to handle. We could do it, and we are going to do it, but we have to be careful. With 2 Maggots out, it can be tough. So what we do is we just say, people will call that they'll handle the next cast, regardless of which one it's on, and then they'll make sure that they get whichever Maggot is doing its next cast with a stun, with a knock, with a gouge. You'll see there, we end up using knock, ring of peace. We have a lot of abilities to control them, but we might run out at some point soon. So we do have to be careful. It's now reaping procced as well, so we'll do reaping with the rest of this pack. And I'm just making sure that this maggot doesn't get any funny business here. Gouge, blind or whatever. Okay, no, that cast is just going off. That's fine. Maggots can cast in a frontal, and it's okay if nobody's in that frontal, but the dominating strategy that people do in high keys involves just stopping their cast, because they'll basically one-shot anybody who does get caught in that breath. So just stopping the cast from going through is a little bit more reliable than telling everybody to dodge, because sometimes it can be hard to see which way it's going when it's in the middle of a huge set of reaping like this. So we do have to be careful of that. You'll see Flawless here actually beating me on damage on this pull. The Echoing Blade, he's playing 3 Echoing Blades, so his damage to reaping is very, very high. The only way that I'm going to beat him on reaping is if I have Adrenaline Rush ready and I have all my flurry charges stacked up, which I did not for this one. So Flawless here showing that Assassination can absolutely be competitive at any part of the game with Outlaw. However, with the setup he's playing, his single target isn't... you'll see this and you'll be like, oh my gosh, Assassination better at AoE and single target. But the problem is he had to sacrifice quite a bit of single target to get that AoE. And he needs re-stealths to do his damage. So if he ends up ever not having a stealth coming into a pack, he'll be in a lot more trouble than I would be. So at the end of the day, I think I end up doing more overall than him in this dungeon, but it really does go to show, like, there are people that are succeeding with Assassination here in Season 2, and in Season 3, I expect we'll be seeing a lot of Assassination all over the place. So the spec is by no means dead. Outlaw is just, Outlaw can do as well as Assassination with a lot less work. You don't have to play around it with re-stealths, so that's a large part of the reason why people love Outlaw this season. But it's by no means like strictly better or anything. I really don't think it is. I think Assassination is totally fine and a very good spec to play. And some of my score actually comes with Assassination keys. Like I have a Shrine of the Storm 24 on my score for Season 2 that was done as Assassination. So it's absolutely a valid spec. Nothing wrong with Assassination. I think it's really cool to say, oh, they're rolled a 5 buff. Nice. That's something Assassination can't do. This is actually the best combination of 5 buffs for AoE also. I'm missing Skull and Crossbones, which doesn't do anything in AoE, so I'm effectively... This is a 1 in 600 chance to roll this buff, and this buff is absolutely what we're looking for here. You'll see I'm just... any Outlaw Rogue will do this. Anytime you roll a 5 buff, you're just sprinting ahead. You're like, come on, pull the dungeon. I'm bored, I have 5 buffs. Get me in there. I need to do some damage. And so we're gonna kill this Bloodswarmer, we're gonna kill these Guardians, and I'm just having the time of my life here, firing off my Sinister Strikes, firing off my shots, just doing some damage on these 4 targets here, doing almost 100k DPS. My flurry charges are out now, and now my 5 buff is expiring, so it's the fun is almost over. But for a brief, beautiful period of time, for a very beautiful period of time there, we were really cool with our 5 buffs, and that's what counts. So we managed to kill off a Bloodswarmer there, bolstered onto some skeletons, but it doesn't really matter. Now comes a part where, okay, so these skeletons, the Guardians will put a shield on themselves, not too big a deal. Death Speaker does Raise Dead, which does need to be kicked, but also Death Speakers cast Wicked Frenzy, which puts a buff on a nearby Guardian that causes its auto attacks to apply a huge dot to the tank. The dot is dispellable, but it'll keep being reapplied. However, it's also soothable off the Guardian, and it's spell reflectable back onto the Guardian. So our strategy with Wicked Frenzy is we let a Wicked Frenzy cast go off, Nerf activates his Spell Reflect for 1 auto attack, and that reflects a huge amount of damage back onto the Guardian. And then before the next auto attack comes out from that Guardian, Venter soothes the Wicked Frenzy off of it. All right, so that handled, it's reaping time. We're gonna reap into this Bloodswarmer, and I think into the rest of this trash, actually. We're gonna do it all at once. Here we go. Bloodswarmer, though, is the kill threat. That's the thing that we need to focus on. As long as the Bloodswarmer doesn't get to hit us too hard, we should be okay. So all of our damage goes on into the Reaping, or into the Bloodswarmer. As soon as the Bloodswarmer's down, we're going to be in good shape. I think there are some other mobs here that people are watching for kicks or whatever, but the main threat really is just the Bloodswarmer. Once that goes down, we're going to be good here, and we're just cleaving off the rest of this stuff here. Thirst for Blood on me, that's from the Bloodswarmer. Thirst for Blood is mostly shadow damage, so you cloak it, you don't parry it. However, the mob will melee you also, so cloak and parry together will mitigate all the damage. Cloak mitigates like 80% of the damage from being fixated. Parry mitigates the last 20%. So you can decide how to use those two accordingly. Now we're just going to finish off these 2 Rots, this Lasher and this Tormented Soul. You'll see Yoda there. I believe he got stunned or something into that swirly. That's how he died. That's the charitable explanation for what happened to him. Otherwise, he was like whirling dragon punching or something. I don't know. We'll say he got stunned into it, and that ended up costing him his life there. And it looks like he's making the decision to not take the B-Res here. This is a good decision. Just deciding, okay, look, this pack is almost over. We'll just take the normal res instead. It'll cost us a little bit more time, but it'll save us a battle res, which is a valuable resource. So yeah, we'll see. You'll see Yoda getting rezzed the old-fashioned way. I'm dropping a little auto hammer over there, repairing my gear because one of them was about to break. And now we go on to Cragmaw the Infested, the second boss in here. Even on Fortified weeks, you should always lust Cragmaw the Infested. That's because if you don't lust Cragmaw the Infested, basically a lust on this boss fight will remove a tantrum generally from its cast, and it'll save you a lot of time. So even though it doesn't make the boss fight like killable or anything, the most time-saving lust in this dungeon is on Cragmaw the Infested. So no matter where you use your first lust, you need to make sure you use your second lust on Cragmaw. You should use your first lust on either the first boss or a first trash pull, and then just keep pulling trash until your second lust is ready, and then pull with Cragmaw is the strat that I would recommend there. So this boss fight, there are times where it will decide randomly between whether it's going to do a charge or an indigestion, and then it will always start alternating from there until its next tantrum. You want to assign each person in your group to a different quadrant of the room. Generally, your healer is going to stand pretty still, and the rest of your group is going to go far afield to get the ticks there, and make sure that none of them turn into actually finish their cast and turn into ticks. You just want to go squish those all. And there's an indigestion cast. Nerf just walks out of range there. As long as you're moving away once the indigestion cast starts, you won't take any damage from it. You can also leap out. You can also you can do all kinds of things to take no damage from it, but it does a lot of damage, so you need to make sure you do one of them. One interesting thing about these phases also is it either goes charge, indigestion, charge, or indigestion, charge, indigestion. The indigestion, charge, indigestion route, or actually it doesn't even do a second indigestion. It'll just go straight into the tantrum. So that makes the phase a little bit shorter, which is a bad thing. So ideally, you get a longer phase, and the way you get the longer phase is by having it choose to charge first. You can see the next order of business is going to be charge or indigestion. If that's a charge, we get a nice long phase. If it's an indigestion, we'll get a shorter phase by like 10 seconds or something. So you'll see here what it's about to first cast. Okay, it's indigestion, so it's going to go indigestion, charge, tantrum. Instead of, if it chooses charge, it would go charge, indigestion, charge, tantrum. And that would be more uptime on the boss, and we'd have to deal with fewer tantrums. Tantrums are the real main threat on this fight. Neither charge nor indigestion do any damage to anybody, theoretically, assuming you dodge them correctly, which, we have been. Obviously, that doesn't always happen in pugs, but that's the goal. So yeah, Cragmaw the Infested here, going down eventually. One more tantrum here, and then we'll be able to kill it before the next one is the goal. Just making sure we kill our stuff here. You'll see I'm always running to this part of the room, soaking the ticks over here. And making sure that we don't end up getting killed by a huge spawn of ticks. Sometimes people will overcommit to Cragmaw. They'll see it at like 10% and they'll start attacking it, and then they'll die to 10 ticks spawning and just one-shotting the tank or whatever. You got to be careful of that. But at this point, Cragmaw below 10%, way low on energy. Even if it starts another tantrum, we're gonna focus it. We're gonna kill Cragmaw. We're not gonna let it. Sometimes I'll see people do the opposite mistake where they'll just not kill Cragmaw. Cragmaw will be at 2% and they'll focus on soaking. When they could just focus boss and finish the fight 20 seconds earlier. Okay, so we're going to start by doing this horror blinded, and we're going to pull this trash here back onto it and then kill all that at the same time, making sure we keep the horror kicked, so setting that one up so that it doesn't get a cast off. I set my focus on the Death Speaker, and my target is the horror. The Death Speaker CC'd far away, though. For now, we'll take care of the Death Speaker once the horror is in. Okay, so no, my focus is the horror, actually. I might have switched that over. We're going to kill the horror, and then we're going to move these skeletons onto the Death Speaker and switch our focus to that. This is one great way to handle bolstering, is if there are two important mobs that are worthy of focus and a bunch of unimportant mobs, you can kill, like you can CC one of the important mobs and focus the important mob on top of a bunch of unimportant mobs, and then move those unimportant mobs at half health onto the other important mob and repeat. And that is a good process to be efficient while still dealing with bolstering. Another place you can do that in this dungeon is with Feral Bloodswarmers. There are a couple pulls where you could go like Bloodswarmer, Rot, Lasher, and just focus Bloodswarmer and then pull a second Bloodswarmer while the other stuff's at 50%. We didn't include any of those in our route, but it's an absolutely valid thing to do. So again, here you'll see Wicked Frenzy, Spell Reflect comes off from Nerf, and then the Soothe goes off on the Guardian that the Wicked Frenzy was on. That's our strategy to deal with that ability, as discussed earlier. and we're just going to finish killing off these Guardians. Now we're going to go into the pull here with Defiler and another Defiler. Two Defiler pulls with this comp, we can handle them indefinitely because 4 melee kicks is enough. If you have 2 melee kicks and 2 ranged kicks, you can handle them for 3 hard casts. Defilers do 3 different casts. They do Withering Curse that needs to be kicked. They do Shadow Bolt Volley, which needs to be kicked. And they do Summon Spirit Drain Totem, which does not need to be kicked. You just need to run away after they cast that from the totem. So we've assigned 2 people to do a kick rotation to each of these. And they're just going to look for a cast, and they'll kick it as long as it's not a Spirit Drain Totem. The Spirit Drain Totems we just run away from. And we just make sure that we get our kicks on the other stuff here. Keep cleaving these things down. If your composition is much more challenged with kicks than ours is, if you're playing like Balanced Druid, Shadow Priest, tank rogue or whatever, then you're gonna actually want to kill one of these things before it gets its 4th cast off, because its 4th cast, that's when you'll start having problems with enough kicks. But with our comp, we can do it indefinitely. So we reap once again. It's a reaping wave. We want to do a reaping wave with something. We're gonna do this Defiler and this Death Speaker. Now, the Death Speaker requires 1 kick on Raised Dead. The Defiler, now that we have only 1 going, we are actually gonna kick the Spirit Drain Totem ideally. Okay, there we actually end up letting it through. That's ideally my theory with this Defiler is that you should kick Spirit Drain Totem when there's nothing else important to kick. Another option though, when there's Grave Bolters around, is to use that kick on a Grave Bolt. That's also valid, and that's what we ended up doing here. The main thing is just like when you're thinking about kicks, there's priorities of kicks. So there are some casts that aren't worth kicking some of the time, but when there aren't other casts going on, those things move up to being worth kicking again, right? So that's my little spiel on kicks. So Reaping Wave handled, Trash Pack handled, Venter's drinking up real quick here, and we move on to the penultimate boss fight, Sporecaller Zandalar. This boss fight, pretty fun one. I like this boss fight. There's a lot of cool stuff going on. With Double Rogue, it's pretty easy also because we can just cloak if we ever mess up these things. So the way to do it is you'll see Nerf there has moved the boss onto the ring and then pointed it to the side. That's the most efficient way to use Shockwave to clear as many mushrooms as possible. Some tanks will keep the boss in the middle of the room, pointed to the outside, and that will hit a shallower range of mushrooms than doing what Nerf is doing here, which is having the boss be on the circle of the outside of the room and pointed to the side. Meanwhile, the rest of us are going to get targeted by upheavals, and we're just going to take those on to the mushrooms here. So you'll see here, there's some errant mushrooms over here. Somebody might need to soak these. We'll have to see how many of those we get. Nope, we got them all. Huge play. We managed to get all the mushrooms. Nobody needed to soak any. And now we're just avoiding this Festering Harvest here, trying not to get hit by the balls here. The balls do apply a stack of the disease. Worst case, we do have Yoda on a monk who is able to dispel diseases, but we would rather not take any of that damage from getting hit by those spores. So here comes the next set of upheavals, just making sure we drop those in a place that kills a lot of mushrooms. It's not too important with our composition to get them all. We can just always, at any time, cloak and soak a bunch of mushrooms without being in really any serious danger. So that is what we'll end up doing potentially here. Or when there's just one mushroom by itself, somebody can just soak it and tank the damage or get dispelled by our monk. And that's also not too threatening. So you'll see there's one mushroom over here, and there's a set of mushrooms over here. I'm just going to fire off my cloak now, get these mushrooms. Somebody's going to solo soak that one. It's going to be nerfed with Spell Reflect active, so he'll take less damage from that magic, and he'll take less damage from this magic explosion here. He'll see Yoda has found a way to take damage, or to get 2 stacks of the disease from the balls, but that's not too big of a problem. He will just dispel himself, and everything will be okay. So now, going to the fight is really rinse and repeat. You just keep moving these upheavals to kill as many mushrooms as you can. My cloak is down. Flawless still has his though, so we'll still be okay. If there ends up being any straggler mushrooms, Flawless can always soak those. If there are any mushrooms that remain unsoaked when a Festering Harvest comes off, then you get into this rough spot where everybody gets a stack for each mushroom, and that can be very fatal unless you have a Mistweaver monk. Mistweaver monks can just press Revival and clear all those diseases. So if you're playing with a Mistweaver, one strategy you might consider using is just letting a full set of, doing a rotation where you just don't kill any mushrooms at all. You just focus on your damage on the boss, drop the upheavals off to the side or whatever, but you don't care about hitting the mushrooms. And then you immediately hit Revival as soon as the Festering Harvest goes off. That's a valid strategy that you can do when you choose to play with a Mistweaver. We don't have a Mistweaver though, so we don't have access to that strat. We got to do this the old-fashioned way. At this point, the boss is low enough on health that we don't care. One thing that is worth noting is when this boss dies, these balls are still going to be live. So you'll see I managed to get a stack of the debuff here. You got to be careful of those. That's a weird thing. Most of the time when a boss fight's done, things end, but not those balls. You gotta still dodge them. Now I'm gonna use my shroud here. This shroud isn't necessary. You can go around the side instead, but we're not gonna use our shroud anyway, so we may as well. Now we're gonna fight this Defiler and these Guardians, and we're gonna kick every cast on this Defiler, including the Spirit Drain Totem, hopefully. I haven't watched the footage to be sure that's what we're gonna do, but that's what we should do here is either, I mean, I guess it would be okay if we used all our other kicks on Guardian Bone Shield casts. That would be fine too. But yeah, we're just, okay, there we go. We got the kick on the totem also, so we're making sure here that nothing gets through, that the Defiler isn't going to cast us anything bad here, and that we're not going to have to move for a totem. So yeah, Defiler goes down, Guardian's at half health. Once again, that means it's time to pull into the Death Speaker. Nerf takes a beat, make sure he's got his defensives ready. Wicked Frenzy goes off, he spell reflects, we purge. You'll see the Dock on him for a second there, but it got dispelled nice and quick by Venter here. Nerf at pretty low health. Does get a Cenarian Ward and an Iron Bark and is starting to kite here. Nerf has very good awareness for when he's low and when he might die. He's just not going to be getting meleeed at that time. And that's part of the reason that you'll never see him die is that he just is always not next to a mob if he's low on health. He's just not taking auto attacks if he's about to die. So fantastic play there. Now we're just going to finish off these Guardians. We're going to try and kick the Bone Shield so that they don't absorb too much of our damage. Each of us kind of just looking at a different one, making sure that we're going to kick Bone Shield. As they go off there, okay, except for that one. We didn't kick that one. I should have been paying attention and kicking that one. But every time I watch these videos, I'm like, this is not I'm not very good at this game. There's a lot of stuff I could do better. We're gonna use our second Shroud here, get through to the end here. These last two Corruptors will be the last count that we need to trigger the final Reaping Wave, which is one of the nice things about this route, is that, yeah, this will be our last Reaping Wave, and we'll just take this down into the boss. These Faceless Corruptors do a couple of casts. They can do they do the Abyssal Reach, those tentacles. The tentacles will always spawn one per player that will hit where that player was. So no matter where you are and where the tentacles are, you will need to move every time there's an Abyssal Reach cast. And then ideally you remember where people were and you don't move on to where anybody else was, because it can be hard to tell which direction the tentacles are about to slam, but they always slam where people were. One way that you can do this as well is you can kind of move as a group, and by moving as a group, you'll keep space ahead of you that is empty and just always move on to that. Then there's Maddening Gaze, which is a frontal ability that you need to dodge. It is a one-shot at this difficulty, but it also fears you at lower difficulties. But this difficulty is just a one-shot, so we try not to get one-shot. Unfortunately, Yoda here has fallen prey to the fatal flaw of getting one-shot. That one looked like it was by a tentacle. It does happen. It does happen. But we're okay. We just expend one of our battle reses. Not a big deal. Dodging these Corruptors now. And finishing these off. It doesn't really matter if we kill them evenly. Reaping will only trigger when the second one dies. The only reason we have to kill them evenly is for bolstering purposes. You'll see here I'm saving up my Blade Flurries at this point, saving up Blade Flurries for the big AoE that's incoming, getting ready for the boss with Reaping. This is my favorite part of Underrot. We're just going to get started on these mobs here and start trying to roll some great buffs for the AoE phase that's coming. And then we're going to go on a little adventure downstairs into the last boss room. Unfortunately, I don't have any good buffs, so I'm not going to do huge damage here. If you have good buffs when you come down into this room, you can do absurd damage. So we get down here. It's about time to pull the boss. We just turn on our Blade Flurry, start attacking everything, focus the boss. The rest of the Reaping Wave, unimportant. It'll die. We just got to dodge some abilities. Our tank's got to survive the damage. But he's avatared right now. He's got his demo shout out. He's thunderclapping, and he's doing 200k DPS as a very fair and balanced Protection Warrior spec. Me and Flawless trying to keep up here in second and third place here in damage. Doing this with Reaping, sometimes you can get yourself into some difficulties. You got to make sure that you do still clear your debuff with the Cleansing Light ability. But we managed to do that. We managed to be okay here. And the Reaping Wave is now all gone. And now I roll good buffs. That's the way it works, is the good buffs get rolled always after the Reaping Wave is done. That Vile Expulsion goes in a little bit of a weird direction, but that's okay. The strategy with this boss that I like is you want to shoot a Vile Expulsion in one direction, then move the boss in the other direction and keep shooting back in that direction. So it's like a clock, right? Like you'd stand at 3 o'clock and shoot the Vile Expulsion clockwise, and then you'd move back to 2 o'clock and keep shooting the Vile Expulsion clockwise. And that way you'll always be playing in a nice safe space, and there's always a huge amount of room behind you that is dirty and that you can keep just making dirtier and keep moving the boss around the room in that way. So that's what we're doing here, just keep shooting the Vile Expulsions back the way we came. It's not the cleanest execution of the strategy that I've ever seen, but it's fortified. We can get away with it. We just keep attacking the boss, burning the boss down. The spores, we need to make sure we don't get them into melee. So those are getting thunderclapped. They're getting blade flurried when they get close. Flawless can use a fan of knives if he needs to, but obviously, we'd rather avoid having that. Ideally, the best way for our damage would be if I can kill them with the blade flurry, because that's going to give me stacks of keep your wits about you, which is going to increase my single target to the Unbound Abomination. Next patch, that's going to be even more valuable because you're going to get more damage per, like when you're hitting one spore, than you do right now. So that's going to be something cool in 8.2. Anyways, Unbound Abomination now. Once it reaches 100 energy, it spawns 2 adds. Those 2 adds, once they're killed, will do 15, or will do a sixth of its health each. So you have to get it to 100 energy 3 times. It doesn't take any damage itself. It just absorbs damage, and that damage goes onto its energy bar. It's a strange mechanic, but that's how it works. And then the adds will just get killed by the Titan Keeper. There's no need to switch to the adds until the final set of adds, when you can switch to one if you want to help speed things up a little bit. It doesn't do anything useful to kill the adds quickly earlier, though. You just want to let the Titan Keeper take care of them and keep focusing damage on the boss to speed up the time that the next set of adds get spawned, because that is the timer on this boss fight. But now, as we're approaching this boss being at full energy here, we're getting ready to swap to a Visage when it does show up. Ooh, you'll see we got a Spore in the group there. Spore in the group. That can be a way to wipe on this fight, is Spores can spawn in the group and you can just die. It's it happens, that's this fight is one of the joys of this game, is sometimes you can do everything right and still die when a Spore like that spawns in your group. So try not to have that happen, but it does sometimes, and sometimes you'll have an Underrot key die because of it. This wasn't one of them though. We managed to survive it. That's going to be the end of this key here. Underrot plus 24, pretty good run. Pretty cool setup here. Upgrades on both the items, 5 item levels on one and avoidance on the other. Pretty lucky. I hope you've enjoyed this video though. If you have, remember to like it. Remember to subscribe to my channel. Check out my Twitch, twitch.tv/Dratnos. If you have Amazon Prime, you can subscribe to me for free over there. So that's something that I'd appreciate it if you did, if you have that and aren't using it. Follow me on Twitter @Dratnos, and check out my other videos on my channel. Talk to me in the comments. I'll try and be here. I'm not always here, but I'll try and be here in the comments and reply to any questions you have. And thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.